KMET1490am.com. You can also go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store on your phone to download the free app. Now you can listen live or play any of your favorite programmers' podcasts using your smartphone. Don't miss out on the free KMET smartphone apps. Go to KMET1490am.com and download your free phone app today.
The Inner Voice Show is a dialogue between the host and the listeners about their relationships. This show is not an attempt to assess, diagnose, or treat any mental health or illness condition. Please consult your physician, psychiatrist, or psychotherapist for personal matters.
Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and I have Sean in studio. This is a show about you, what matters most in life, our mind, our thoughts, feelings, actions, relationships, and our fulfillment in this beautiful journey of life. So in this show, I'll bring you the latest research and good news about getting free from anxiety. So this is an amazing study that people in Canada have done about, yes, you can actually complete generals and anxiety disorders. Yes, that's good news. Then I will speak to Meryl Davids Landau. She's an award-winning writer and the author of Warrior One. It's a novel into mindfulness and yoga. And it's both compelling, fun, and gives you amazing tips, daily tips that you could use. So be sure to listen to my podcast in iTunes or Stitcher. You can actually also listen to the podcast, Radio's podcast, or go to Dr. Foojan Zeine podcast. Share it with your friends. Review it. Put your good comments on there and let me know what it is that you want me to talk about, all the topics that you want me to talk about. So we'll be right back with the tip of the week.
Hello, this is Dr. Foojan Zeine. For all of you who are interested in changing something in your life, or shifting a new career, or bettering your intimate relationship, or, it's just time to take care of you. But you really don't have time to take off from your busy day, or you're just too far away from my Beverly Hills or San Clemente office. I have a great offer for you. I'm only offering this time-limited package to you for online therapy if you are living in the state of California, or online coaching wherever you live around the world. Now listen, a 10-week package with the $500 discount. Call me to schedule your appointment, 818-648-2140, 818-648-2140, or go to Foojan.com, Foojan.com for more information. It's time to take care of you because you are worth it.
This week I was witnessing and wrote something for you to be able to share with you. And suddenly yesterday, we all heard the news about Kobe Bryant. So my condolences to his family, to his fans, to everyone who loved him and is totally surprised and, just experiencing grief of his loss and his daughter's loss. So I'm saddened by the news, but it also brought up what I was going to share with you before, more and more about how precious life is and how in a millisecond, we just don't have it anymore. I've been witnessing how when we focus only on one negative attribute that we don't like, we lose the sight of all that is available that we can actually be grateful for. So kind of observe yourself and see in which area of your life do you only focus on negative elements and torture yourself all day. And because that's the area you want to focus and see, like the areas of life that's what you do. Do you do it everywhere, or is it just one place? I've been there myself many, many times and many years, and I've been working with people in different areas of their life that focuses only on negativity, and then they only make them feel miserable and all the time. Is it the area of is the area of your work and career that you do this with? Like you only look at negativity? Maybe you don't like your boss. Maybe you don't like your employees, your coworkers, or a task that you don't like at work and obsess over it all day. But you don't see the greatness or benefits that you are getting every day, and only see the worst attributes and finally get ready to quit. Is it in the area of your intimate relationship or marriage? Maybe you zoom in to one behavior that your mate does, which is unpleasant to you, and you tend to maximize the negativity of that, the effect of that behavior on your life, and then you minimize all the other great things that she or he might be doing for you, and you just don't notice it. Keep that up, and you'll be getting yourself ready for a divorce or leaving the relationship, right? Do you do this around a relationship with your body? One thing you might not like about yourself or your future that becomes the only focus of attention and agony and not allowing you to enjoy the rest of you? So you deserve to be happy. Being grateful for what you have is a cornerstone of that happiness. The truth is that every element that is in your life has advantages and some great qualities. So enjoy those elements. This does not mean that you can't choose otherwise and do things to make your life better. It just means don't suffer through it. Be grateful and shift what you need to shift. And after hearing this news about Kobe Bryant, and as we're talking with friends and family and clients, and you could really see suddenly, it's like, wow, all I focus is the negativity, and then suddenly it's taken away, and the greatness of that person is taken away, or my life is taken away. And then there's the sorrow for people who are, left behind and someone has gone away. Then it's the sorrow. So I hope that you, if you are in grief and sorrow, and I hope that you do feel better and you pass through this time. And if you are not going through the sorrow or the grief, at least I hope that you'll look at what you have in life and see how precious every moment is. And you don't need to suffer. You literally don't need to suffer. So we'll be right back with research around anxiety disorders.
Join the conversation every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific for Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Dr. Foojan is a radio and TV host, international speaker, psychotherapist, life coach, and the author of Life Reset, The Awareness Path to Create the Life You Want. She brings you the latest research and interviews with experts in the field of cognitive sciences. Anyone who loves to grow and create growth for humanity gets a voice on this call-in show. Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Monday afternoons at 3 p.m. Pacific on Smart Talk KMET 1490 AM and on KMET1490am.com.
I am sure that all of you who are listening at one point in life have experienced anxiety. We all do. It's a very, very common emotion and a state to experience. But a lot of people also suffer from anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, which is mostly that you're anxious about something that appears to be unknown to you. Although when we kind of dig in, we figure out what all the beliefs around it is that creates it. Some of it has to do with forward thinking, but only negative forward thinking, pushing a lot of the negativity of what if this happens? And obviously, what if the worst scenario happens? And so this study is about anxiety disorders that are the most common of psychiatric illness. Yet researchers know very little about factors associated with this, with the recovery. So a new University of Toronto study published in the Journal of Affective Disorder investigated 3 levels of recovery in a large representative sample of more than 2,000 Canadians with a history of generalized anxiety disorder. So this study reports that 72% of Canadians with a history of generalized anxiety disorder have been free of the mental health condition for at least 1 year. And overall, 40% were in the state of excellent mental health, and almost 60% had no other mental illness or addiction issues such as suicidal thoughts or substance dependence, major depressive disorder, or a bipolar disorder in the past year. The definition of excellent mental health sets a very high bar. To be defined in excellent mental health, respondents had to do and achieve 3 things: almost daily happiness or life satisfaction in the past month, high levels of social and psychological well-being in the past month, and freedom from generalized anxiety disorder, depressive disorder, suicidal thoughts, and substance dependence for at least the preceding full year. The lead researcher on the study says, "We were so encouraged to learn that even among those whose anxiety disorders had lasted a decade or longer, half had been in remission from the generalized anxiety disorder for the past year, and 1/4 had achieved excellent mental health and well-being." This research provides a very hopeful message for individuals struggling with anxiety, with their families and health professionals. The findings suggest that full recovery is possible, even among those who have suffered from for many years with the disorders. So individuals who had at least one person in their lives who provided them with a sense of emotional security and well-being were 3 times more likely to be in excellent mental health than those without a confidant. For those with anxiety disorder, the social support that extends from a confidant can foster a sense of belonging, self-worth, which may promote recovery. In addition, those who turn to their religious or spiritual beliefs to cope with everyday difficulties had 36% higher odds of excellent mental health than those who did not use spiritual coping. Other researchers have also found a strong link between recovery from mental illness and belief in higher power. The researchers found that poor physical health, functional limitations, insomnia, and a history of depression were impediments to excellent mental health in that sample. Health professionals who are treating individuals with anxiety disorder need to also consider their patients' physical health problems and social isolation in their treatment plan. So obviously, when somebody is going through the suffering of generalized anxiety disorder, cognitive behavioral work, my model, awareness integration model has shown in most 3 of the studies that we did that brings down anxiety about 64%. And so a lot of it has to do with not only learning how to define what's real and what's not, and what is it that a person can do, and what is the amount of control that they actually have, and being able to cut things in small pieces and have the ability to handle and manage those small pieces, not control, because that's one of the illusions that gets us into anxiety, but to manage every step that comes in front of us and makes us anxious. But also to regulate emotion, contain the emotion, the ability to release the emotion. This study was also adding this piece that when you have a confidant that you can bounce things off of, and they are supportive of you and can pull you through, it really, really helps for you to feel safe, and with that feeling of safety, bring down the anxiety. I went to Cirque du Soleil last night, Vita. It was amazing. I really highly suggest it for anyone who likes this type of thing. It was just an amazing, amazing show. One thing that was interesting to me is that at one point, one of the guys who was, kind of like flying through this circle, or I don't know what it was, but it was a circle that he was trying to kind of fly into it. And he kicked it. So the plan didn't go well. It was about 1,500 people who were all sitting. And what happened was that the whole 1,500 together was like gasped of kind of caring for this person and wanting the person to really succeed. And then obviously the guy went back and they put it back and he did it. And there you go. He succeeded. 1,500 people got up and cheered for him in a way like everybody was happy. Everybody was cheering for him to do his best. And you could really see when people are around you, a society who's around you is rooting for you, even if you have failures, even if things don't go your way, even if there are fear about the failure and not going. Having that type of a mirror obviously creates a safety and security and confidence that you're okay. Even if you fall, you're okay. And the other aspect of it was the faith that it uses. If you don't have something externally, the faith of the future will be okay no matter what, is the spiritual concept that also supports and brings down anxiety. Because for anxiety, sometimes we really face that we don't have control over everything. Seriously, we probably have control over minimum 1% of anything. But when you realize that we only do that, and the rest of it, if I'm surviving, if I've, kind of like lasted 58 years and I'm still kicking and going, it's something beyond my control. And then usually that type of having a faith, whether it's just being spiritual or other people are religious, they have a defined kind of a belief, that type of a faith also calms down the concept of anxiety. So I hope that research helped. And to follow that, I love this conversation to be continued with award-winning writer Meryl Davids Landau, which is the author of A Warrior One. And it's an amazing book. We'll talk about it. And it also talks about anxiety and everything that's going on, the support of everyone around, that they are there and is helpful for the person in this book. And yoga, meditation, those are amazing for bringing down anxiety. So my guest, and I'm excited to have her, is an award-winning writer. And her prior books include the novel Downward Dog and Upward Fog. Is a finalist in the Forward Review Fiction Book of the Year competition, and Enlightened. Another book, Enlightened Parenting, which is a book of essays. She has been published in the Oprah magazine, Parents, Prevention, Vice, Huffington Post, Glamour, Self, Good Housekeeping, and many other publications. Meryl has won numerous awards, including a nomination for a prestigious National Magazine Award and first place finish from the American Society of Journalist Authors. She's an integral yoga certified teacher, moderator of Yoga Folks Group on Goodreads, and she blogs on spiritual and yoga topics and at Medium. For more information, you can actually check her out at meryldavidslandau.com. So, I think she's with us. We don't even have to go on a break and come back. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm great.
I'm excited to have you.
So nice to be talking to you.
Yes. So I'm actually excited because we met virtually because you were writing for Huffington Post at that time.
That's right.
We met virtually, and we had a wonderful dialogue together, and then you wrote an article that I was also in it, and was published in Huffington Post. And you started, beyond all the magazines that you write for, you started writing your own novels. It seems like to bring what you know about yoga, about your own spiritual path, and you brought it into 2 beautiful novels, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love to read fiction. And I love to read women's fiction. I just, it's fun to just kick back and read a relaxing book that's just fun. And I love to read all the spiritual and mindful nonfiction books that are out there in the world. And it just dawned on me a number of years ago, where is the book that combines these 2 things? Yeah. Where's the fun fiction, the light fiction that you could take to the beach or take on vacation that deals with these topics of mindfulness, of centering yourself, that you wouldn't necessarily take this, serious nonfiction book with you on vacation. So that was kind of the inspiration behind starting the first book, Downward Dog, Upward Fog, and then the follow-up book, Warrior One, which are really two separate books and can be read separately.
And I met you recently again in October, November at the Brahma Kumaris at New York. Actually,
yes, we finally got to meet in person.
Yes, that was sweet. With Sister Jenna, the host of American Meditating Radio, and I think you have also we're on American Meditating Radio, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes, that's awesome. So, tell me a little bit about what is the main character going through, because as I read it and I loved it, and there were a lot of great specific techniques that you could immediately use. Like the reader can go and have fun with it, be a part of the story, but have also these bits and pieces where you can utilize it right as a technique. But it's like the spiritual journey of trusting the spiritual journey, and then suffering shows up in life, which happens for all of us in one way or another. And this concept of, do I hold on? How much can I hold on to my faith, and how much I get engaged and the fears show up and I'm engaged in the suffering. And as I was reading the book, I kept seeing how much of this is truly all of us, in a sense.
Right. People ask me, are you Lorna, who's the main character of the book? And I always say, I hope all of us are Lorna, because I try to create a character that goes through real life. She's not some kind of, person who finds in Downward Dog, Upward Frog, she doesn't know anything about any kind of spiritual teachings. And she first discovers them through her sister, who's an interfaith minister, who finally gets her to read some of the many nonfiction books that I myself read and love. So I had Lorna reading them. And so she discovers these teachings, and she starts doing some meditation, doing yoga, doing mindfulness practices. And I didn't want her to become this perfect person who's always able to put these practices into effect, because that's not real life. It doesn't matter. I think it doesn't matter. I mean, okay, maybe there are a few people on this planet who are at that level where they never lose their cool and they never worry and they never have the anxiety that you were talking about before with that study, but that's not most of us. So most of us need to keep reaching back to these tools to try to bring us back to our center when we get off base, when we have real human reactions to real human problems. And that's really what I wanted Lorna to be, this person who represents something that we see in our own life all the time.
And you bring a lot of different types of spiritual teaching and specific intervention, kind of, if I call it intervention, or I call it like, keys and things that you could actually do, which some parts of it are from spiritual teaching. Some of them are, practical tools that you bring into to the audience who are reading it. Can you share some with us?
Sure. And some of them even come from psychology.
Yeah.
For example, I wrote an article not that long before I started this book on acceptance and commitment therapy, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. And I was struck as I was learning about that, how Buddhist it sounded. And so, that's even something that's integrated into the story where Lorna discovers those things. So, in that way, Lorna really is me, because my own practice is very eclectic. I like to bring in all different things that I learn, different techniques and tools that I learn from all kinds of avenues, and bring that into my own life. Because for me, the goal of all of meditation, or really any religious or spiritual practice, is to center yourself. How do you bring yourself into the present moment in a way that just calms you and makes you one with the present moment? And there are so many tools that a person can use to do that. And so, one of my aims in writing Warrior One is to introduce the reader to a number of these tools, so that if any one or two or three appeal to you, you can put them into practice, into your own life. And it was fun because recently I was a guest at a book club, and it was not a spiritual book club. It was just a group of women some of whom were into yoga and mindfulness, and some of whom had never really introduced that in their life. And all of them said there was at least one technique from the book that they were able to put into practice in their life. And some of those could be what's called, intending for the next segment. So right before you start something new, and that can be as basic as, I'm going to make a phone call at work now. You just take a moment to bring yourself, to your body and bring yourself into the thoughts of, what am I hoping to accomplish? What are some of the things that I want to be doing in this moment, so that you enter that moment mindfully and not, just crazed like we often do. Or one of the practices that she does, she has issues with her mother, which carry over from Downward Dog, Upward Fog, when she really had issues with her mother. And by Warrior One, she's a little better at dealing with a problematic mother. But one of the techniques that she uses is to go through the alphabet. And this comes from the teachings of Abraham Hicks that I love, where she starts with A and tries to go as far as she can, coming up with a positive word for her mother. Because even situations that are hard or people that we have issues with, there are some good qualities, even we might begrudgingly acknowledge that, but but we do acknowledge that. So if you start with A, she's admirable, she's beautiful, she's caring, she's delightful. With any person, just kind of going through the alphabet, you don't have to get all the way to Z, but just thinking about their positive traits. Really, the purpose of that is to uplift you. So yes. You're thinking about them better. It really has nothing to do with whether they behave any better the next time you interact with them or when you call them. But if you do that, really helps you feel better. And all of the techniques that Lorna uses, meditation and yoga and sitting mindfully at the table and just thinking about her food for a minute before she eats it. All traditions do that, right? Catholics say grace. Why do you say grace? Jewish people have blessings before they eat, but sometimes we disconnect the ritual from the reason for them. And the reason for them is really to bring ourselves back to the present moment so that we can really eat mindfully and appreciate what we're eating and nourish ourselves with the things that we're that we're eating. So all of those teachings and more, all of those practices are sprinkled throughout the book as a way of Lorna bringing herself back to her present moment, but also giving the reader in a lively fiction story, a fun way of finding for themselves some of the tools that might work for their own lives.
And I also saw that the experience that Lorna had with people who were around her. There were people who would be more anxious, which just happens with all of us, and people who can calm us down. And there was a research that I just read for our audience that having some confidant that is beside us and looks at us from a higher self-esteem and kind of just calms us down. It seems like it's a link that we also have with some sort of a reality out there, that someone else also shares with me that everything's going to be okay. So it's not like I'm fooling myself that things were going to be okay. But if I can have enough people out there that I trust that they say everything's going to be okay, then that kind of anxiety goes away and I can be focused in creating a solution, moving forward with it. And also the sense of the community in this book was very real.
Yeah. So one of the things in my own life and in the lives of people who I see who are able to maintain a calm and peaceful place for themselves is that they do surround themselves with people who hold that space that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way I see it. Even if they're saying everything's going to be okay, even if it's not okay in the moment or it doesn't look like it's okay, they're kind of holding the space for you that it's okay. And eventually you'll get to that space. And so one of the people, of course, is her husband, who she has a relationship with, who's also on a spiritual path. And so he's able to help direct her when she goes crazy, and she's able to help direct him when he loses his center. And also she has a best friend, Janelle, who actually in the next book that I'm working on, it's going to be told through Janelle's perspective, because I'm kind of eager to get more into Janelle's head. And she has a group of girlfriends who she hangs out with. I was recently at, Oprah Winfrey is doing these tours around the country to try to inspire and motivate people. And I was recently at the first one that she did in Fort Lauderdale, and she kept talking about, do you have a Gail? Because she's so connected with her friend Gail, who she talks to regularly. And she says, I always am wishing for great things about Gail, and Gail is always wishing for great things about me. And that just struck me when she was talking about that, how important that is. And Lorna has that in the novel with her friend Janelle, who when she's out of sorts, there's someone she can contact and say, help talk me down from the ledge. I'm making a big deal about this thing, which maybe is a big deal, or maybe it's not a big deal. And another person in your life who you can really connect with at that level can really help you get back to being yourself, and you can do that for them. So I do think that that's really important. In yoga, they call that having a sangha, or a community. And it's a community of uplifted people. It's not just a community of people. It's not just the numbers who matter. It's how are their mindset? Are they able to be elevated and keep you elevated?
It is so important to create that type of a community. Not everybody has that, let's say, blessing. That would be something that shows up in their family. Even in your book, Lorna doesn't have that, for example, from her own mother. So sometimes there's this wishful thinking or a fantasy that, there's a family out there that is best, and everybody's this close and they're all doing, and that's what the family looks like. And I'm the only one who wasn't blessed enough to have that type of a family. But I'm sure that most people can really look at it and say, there's, every member of the family might not be that supportive, or might not know how to be supportive. But we can create our own family, even if our own mother or father or siblings don't have that skill. There are people who we can find in our life that can have that skill, and we can call them and bring them to our life and create that type of a chosen family where we can be the best for each other and wish the best for each other, which, moves us forward consistently. The other concept
but I do want to say that I think if you're going to look for that kind of a family, it's smart to look in places where people are more likely to be more elevated. So it's smart to look for those people in a yoga class, or in a religious group, or find a meditation group and on Meetup and start going to that. I think if you go to places where people are more likely to be elevated, then you're more likely to find people who are going to be uplifting you.
Very true. Very true. What got you into the path of yoga and spirituality?
So that's actually a pretty funny story. When I was in my early 20s, I was working out at a gym in New York City, and I was not at all into any spiritual teachings or any spiritual practices. And all of a sudden, I'm on the exercise bicycle with a whole group of people, and there was like a little pathway in front of the bicycle, and I'm exercising away, and this woman just kind of floats by the pathway. And I mean, she really floated by. She had such a light energy. Like, if you would tell me she was levitating, I would have believed it. And she walked by, and she walked into another room, and the door closed behind her. And I turned to somebody next to me. I said, "Do you know who that is?" And they said, "Yeah, she's the yoga teacher." And at the time, which was a number of years ago, yoga was not as popular as it was now. And I had never taken yoga before. I didn't know anybody who took yoga, but I just said, whatever she's selling, I am buying. And I got off my exercise bicycle and I went to that class. And that was the first time I took yoga. And then I repeatedly took yoga at this gym. They had a really great yoga program at the time. And a lot of the teachers at that gym were coming from a spiritual center, New York, the Integral Yoga Institute, which was founded by a Swami. So they were very steeped in the spiritual tradition of the yoga, that it's more than just poses, that it really is about breathing and watching your mind and trying to uplift yourself and be in the moment as much as you can. And that really was the start of my own interest in these things. When I started asking them, can you share some of the books about yoga? And when I first asked that question to this one teacher who had floated by, I thought she was going to give me a book about the history of the yoga practices, the yoga positions. And instead, she gave me a book called To Know Yourself, which was about knowing your mind and understanding your true nature, that your true nature is uplifted and connected to all that is. And I was kind of surprised by that at the time. And that's what really started me on a spiritual path. But then I got interested in every major spiritual teacher who has written a fantastic book. I love Eckhart Tolle. I love Abraham Hicks. I love Byron Katie with her 4 questions to ask yourself when you're in a tight jam, which are questions Lorna asks herself. Is it true? What if it wasn't true? Because a lot of times we think things that just make us nuts that aren't even actually reality.
Very much, yes.
They're just things we're spinning around in our own head. And so I started reading a lot of those teachers and just incorporating a lot of different types of spiritual practices in my life.
And part of the way that the book is, this one and the one before, you also have the character have this issue between how much can she rely on the spirituality, and then she forgets, and then she doesn't believe it, and then she comes in and holds on to it. What were your paths that as you went through learnings of this kind of warm, cold?
I think that definitely happens to most of us.
Oh my God, it happens to me all the time. And that's why I want to hear it from you.
And I go through periods even of meditating where I'm so disciplined, and I'll meditate usually just 15 minutes. I'm not the type of person who meditates for an hour in the morning, but I'll have a very steady practice of meditating for 15 minutes in the morning. And then all of a sudden that'll dissipate, and there will be months that go by where I never sit down to meditate. So I think, all of us kind of go through that, but especially I think when things get challenging, which happens in Warrior One, because really the underlying premise of the novel is there something wrong with her unborn baby? And that's big.
That is big. Talk about anxiety producing thoughts.
Exactly. So, Lorna uses these tools because they're so important for her at this stage, but also forgets to use the tools because so many pressing issues are going on with testing her and waiting for the test results. And now you need another test. Anybody who's been through any medical situation knows that period of time while you're just in the waiting limbo is almost worse than, please just give me a diagnosis.
Yes. Anticipation is worse.
Exactly. A few years ago, I had a medical problem, a GI problem, and trying to get a diagnosis. And there would be times when I would completely forget all these teachings and not read any of these books and not listen to any spiritual things. And that's the time when you need them the most, but that can be the time when you forget to incorporate them. So I think that's common, and you can't berate yourself when it happens. Just like when you're meditating and your mind is all of a sudden you're in the middle of planning a party and you've already got the guest list going and what you're going to buy. And then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be meditating. You can't get mad at yourself for that, because that's just the nature of your mind. And when you forget your spiritual practices, it's the same thing. It's just when you remember, oh, good, I've remembered. Okay, now I'm going to come back now to these practices and try to do some of them.
I can definitely relate to that. I do also, at one point become very systematic about meditation, and then there are times, and I do that with exercise too. It's just, I become very systematic with my health and moving along, and then some stuff happens at work that it just takes me away, or you go on a vacation and kind of get away from all of the routine you set up, and then coming back to it is also hard. But I also had another issue, which I've also seen with some people around me, which at one point it feels like, okay, I'm just doing things to make me feel better, but they're not real. This is just something I tell myself, and none of this is real. And then the conversation becomes, well, how do you define real? Your experience is real, but
Right.
does it always have to be proven by physics for it to be real, or can it be,
Right.
can this also be real? And this is a part of like the going back and forth and the conflict that gets created, especially in the world of, the scientific group, that you keep going back and forth. And I know that the science of even psychology and health is constantly coming back into how yoga and meditation has been so useful. And, the brain has been changing and the body is changing and how much it has. And I took yoga for almost 15 years. And I got to keep going back to it. I haven't yet. But even that, I remember that, the essence of just allowing yourself to learn how to be calmer, more peaceful, so that your brain can be open for solutions, for looking at things in a different light, is so important. And I know that, systematically, this concept is getting a bigger audience which believes in it and works through it and experiences it. But does it seem like there's a force into bringing this into a daily life and daily world in the Western culture?
I mean, I definitely think the Western culture has kind of separated off anything that's mindful or spiritual from the rest of our life. So it's kind of up to us to bring ourselves back to that. And I'm a big proponent in just having little bits of time throughout the day where you bring yourself back to your center. And you were talking about the research, and obviously at this point there's been a fair amount of research on the benefits of yoga and of mindfulness and meditation. But I also think if you just experience it for yourself, you almost don't care what the research shows. Mm-hmm. If you sit for a few minutes, even right now, if you just notice, all of a sudden pay attention to, I'm sitting, my thighs are touching my chair, my back is touching the back of my chair. Like probably none of us noticed that even 30 seconds ago. Our feet are on the floor. What am I smelling? What am I seeing? Just in that 1 second or 10 seconds that you bring yourself to the present moment. If you're typing something, I like to stop periodically and all of a sudden really feel the keys under my fingers, which they were under my fingers the whole time I was typing, but I wasn't aware of that. Or a lot of times when we're eating, we don't even at all notice the food that we're eating. What is the texture and how does it smell and how does it feel in our mouth? And if you just take a few seconds to do those things periodically in the day, I think you're just so much more present. And when you're present, you feel connected to something that's hard to explain what it is, which is why I think the research struggles with that. But when you're feeling connected like that, you feel invincible. You feel like life is wonderful and nothing that happens, even is there something wrong with my unborn baby, when you can get into that connected state, even that doesn't feel as horrible as it does when you're disconnected. I always say I love the expression, which is something that I learned from Swami Satchidananda, the expression beside yourself. When you go crazy and you say, I'm beside myself. And when you stop and look at that, what does that really mean? It means there's myself and I've gotten beside that, and I need to do whatever practices or methods that work for me to bring myself back to myself. And I think when you are connected to yourself in that way, everything just is brighter. The world just seems better and you feel better and life is better. So
you have gone, and you still do, from very, very concrete nonfiction writing about lifestyles, about psychology, about different types of issues that human beings have, to now writing the novels. Are you still doing the nonfiction for all of the magazines?
I do. I still write for a lot of the women's magazines. prevention, good housekeeping, Oprah magazine, and I write for a lot of online websites. I do write mostly about health, but even when I'm writing about serious topics, I always look for ways to incorporate those kinds of uplifting techniques. For example, I'm working on a piece now for Prevention magazine on trauma and interviewing women who have PTSD from various things in their lives that we tend, as a society, tend not to associate with PTSD. We think you have to have been the victim of this horrible crime or have gone to war. And meanwhile, there are a lot of people walking around with PTSD from all kinds of situations in life. And one of the experts that I spoke to, who has been dealing with trauma victims, from wars and things like that, from hurricanes and where their people's houses have been destroyed, he said, mindful meditation, just sit and breathe, take long, slow, deep breaths and bring your awareness to that breath. That is the most important way to heal. So even in an article that's about this serious topic of PTSD, I hope to inspire people to kind of latch on to these tools that they can use in their daily lives, because I just know how valuable these tools have been to my own life. And I want to help everybody discover them if they haven't already through my fiction, which, to try to make the story more fun as you're learning about these techniques, but also through my magazine writing as well.
It's funny that I've kind of conditioned myself that anytime there is any conversation about breathing or deep breath, my body automatically goes through it. So I'm listening, for example, I'm watching a movie and somebody takes a deep breath, I'm automatically taking a deep breath with them, or somebody says, and you just said a breath, and I'm automatically doing that. So it's like that kind of it's kind of like a positive conditioning. It doesn't even have to be
a deep breath. It can just be a breath that I'm noticing. Yeah. Your breath is always there, which is why a lot of meditation techniques involve the breath. It's something that's always there. And so all you have to do is bring your awareness to it. Am I noticing that I'm breathing? And just even that 1 second of I'm noticing my breathing just brings you into that center, into that calm place.
Yeah. What is it that you would be working on next?
Well, I am working on another novel, which Lorna's best friend, Janelle, is the main character of that novel. And part of the reason why I wanted to do that is because Janelle kind of comes across in Warrior One as this perfect friend, this perfect spiritual person. And I think we've all known somebody like that who seems to have it all together and seems to have who seems to be meditating and practicing and always having the right answers. And yet when you scratch the surface a little bit, usually they're not quite as together as you might think they are. So Janelle kind of appears perfect in Warrior One because that book is told through Lorna's perspective. And so she sees Janelle, she puts her up on a pedestal. So I want to write a novel, which I'm currently working on, where we get inside Janelle's head and we can see, no, she's got these same issues. She's got the same anxiety. She's got the same problems that we all have. She's just remembering to use the tools better than some of us do.
Yeah, this brings me a lot of times, some of my friends, as I go through some of the issues and I'm just sharing with them, they're like, but you're a therapist. You should be able to have this all done. I'm like, well, I'm a human being. I first go through this. And yes, I utilize the tools that I have in order to calm myself down or find the solution and, distinguish between the issues. But I still have to have the chance to be the human and, have all my emotions and I go, before I can move through.
And I know some swamis who say that also. You think I'm a swami, I should be perfect. No, I lose it also. We all do. You just have to accept that.
Yeah, and I think that's just being human. And I think when we accept those other parts, the same ways, and you're saying, be aware of your emotions, when I'm also aware of that part of me that it's having an emotional reaction, there's a beauty in that emotional reaction. There's also a message in that emotional reaction, which I also have to see. If there are thoughts that are going there, which, producing those emotional reaction, when I'm noticing it, I get to notice what type of thought patterns I'm using at that moment. And, that is maybe there from a long time ago and I need to do something. So that kind of an awareness is something that is, this is something you and I talked about, my awareness integration technique when you were writing that article. And to be honest with you, and as I recall, how I got the model had to do also with the 15 years of yoga that I did, because the part of, and I remember like the first time my yoga teacher was like, imagine, okay, what are your thoughts doing? Is it jumping? Is it like a train going? Or is it like a bird flying from something to something? Look at your emotions. And so a lot of just getting trained for 15 years to distinguish between all of these things. Then suddenly in my own model, I'm doing the distinctions between thoughts and emotions and behaviors and all of that. So I can see how much that concept of yoga and spirituality has also been kind of like integrated within me, and how it came into the awareness part and the type of work that I do.
Yeah, and I do think that some yoga, yoga in our culture has kind of become a lot of different things. So not all yoga teachers and not all yoga classes are about bringing you into a focus of the present moment. So I think, when some people say, oh, I took yoga and I'm still anxious, it didn't help me at all. I think some of that is what type of yoga and what type of teacher have you been taking yoga from, and maybe look for a different teacher. I used to have this teacher who used to say when we were lying on our mats, he would say, now imagine someone is gently caressing your face and turning your head from one side to the other. And when you turn your head in that way, you are in such a different space that if somebody just says, okay, now look to the left, So it's really about finding the teacher and finding the space where it allows you to go inside yourself and really become aware.
Yes, because some of the yogas that I went to was just more physical, which appeared to be more exercise oriented.
Yes.
And then there's some of them more, I even had my teacher, which I used to call him a yoga therapist, because whenever we sat down, he actually asked, become aware of your body and what's going on. And by the end of the day, when we were together, he would give a special technique to each one of those people, which would work with their condition, like a type of a breathing which worked with their condition. So as you say, there is so many types that people go through. The same as therapy, there's so many different types of therapy that people can utilize in making it better. 1 minute before Sean tells me, I know it's coming up. What is it that we didn't say, but you really, really want our audience to know about you and your work and your book?
I mean, the only thing that I want to say is I hope people check it out. It's a fun novel, even though it's on a serious topic. Is there something wrong with her baby? It's presented in a way that's more an enjoyable read, and hopefully people who read the book, Warrior One, get a lot of techniques and suggestions out of it that they can incorporate into their own lives.
Beautiful. So everyone who's watching us or listening to us, Meryl Davids Landau, go get the Warrior One. You can also visit Meryl at www.meryldavidslandau.com and or Amazon, right? They can buy your
That's
book.
right.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on my show. It was such a joy to see you again.
It was wonderful speaking with you.
Yes, and I hope we get to work together again on many of other books or conversation, some type of conversation.
Or see you at another retreat.
Absolutely. And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And I'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye.
The Inner Voice